Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're all here tonight. I'm really happy to talk to you about this project that is near and dear to my heart. So at first, I want to say thank you to Andrea and Wyoming Wildlife Federation and to Pushroot for continuing to host these wonderful Wildlife on Tap programs. I've learned a lot every time I visit. I learn a lot, and I hope you learn a lot tonight. So it's been a real privilege for me over the past 7 years to work with my friend and colleague, Dr. Courtney Conway, along with his research partners in the US, Canada, and Mexico on this burrowing owl migration project. Burrowing owls are one of 12 species of owls that breed in Wyoming. They're classified as an uncommon summer resident in the state, and they are also classified as a species of greatest conservation need, which means they get special attention on surveys, and we want to find out what's going on with their populations. These little critters average only 10 inches tall. They only weigh about a half a pound, and their wingspan is about 21 inches from wingtip to wingtip. They eat a variety of foods, especially grasshoppers, beetles, and other insects. That's really good. Small birds and mammals, frogs, toads, snakes, and even crawfish. Over the years, we have many, many years of survey data, different surveys that I've been involved in when I was working for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. I don't know if Zach Wallace is here tonight. He is the current non-game bird biologist for Game and Fish. He followed after I retired, and he's doing a great job. But we've known that many, many years of survey data show that burrowing owls are declining in both the United States and Canada, all across their range. However, identifying the causes for these declines can be very challenging, especially for birds like these that migrate long distances every year. Although we have a good handle on where breeding populations occur, because that's part of the work that we do here in Wyoming and other states where they breed and provinces, we definitely need more information across North America about their annual dispersal, both in the spring and the fall. What are their migration routes in the spring and the fall? Are they the same? Are they different? What are their stopover hotspots where they stay and they rest and they refuel so they can continue on? And then also, what are their specific wintering locations? All of these things are part of the puzzle that we need to know. So the big question is, why? Yeah, what are the reasons for these population declines across the burrowing owl's range? One potential cause, and probably a really big one, is the elimination of prairie dogs across the owl's range. All year round, burrowing owls rely on prairie dog and other mammal burrows for nesting sites, for shelter, and to escape from predators. Here in the West, this Western population, they do not dig their own burrows. We have very tough soil, very clayey. That little bird cannot dig through that soil. However, the Eastern population in Florida is different. That sandy soil, they are able to make their own burrows. So that's why we have distinct management reasons for these two populations. Here you can see, I hope you can see it. Yeah, that's good. You can see the close overlap between the ranges of the 5 prairie dog species on the left map and the western burrowing owls on the right map. Everybody see that? I'll give you a minute to absorb that. Also, over the years, you can see the black-tailed prairie dog is a huge component of the burrowing owl range. So they're a very, very important species for the burrowing owl for those 3 things, nesting, that I mentioned earlier. However, black-tailed prairie dog populations over the years have declined by 98%. So that has a huge impact on burrowing owls and other animals that need those burrows for their life cycle. So we call prairie dogs a keystone species. They provide not just habitat for their own species, but habitat and critical environmental needs for other species, not just burrowing owls, but things like ferruginous hawks and others. However, given that, burrowing owls are also decreasing outside of the the black-tailed prairie dog's range. So some other reasons for decline might be widespread grasshopper control. Again, this is a very important food item for the burrowing owl, and if that food item is removed from the landscape, that can have an impact. Changes in prairie dog populations due to the disease plague, which they are very susceptible to. So when we have fewer prairie dogs on the landscape, we have fewer burrows available to burrowing owls on the landscape. And then it can also be problems along their migration routes or on their wintering grounds that we don't know about. So to address the information gap, we have many partners in the US, Canada, and Mexico that are working together on what we call a full annual life cycle conservation project for burrowing owls. The goal here is to track the owls from their breeding grounds, along their migration routes, to their wintering areas, and then back again to their breeding sites. So that's what we call a full annual life cycle. Thanks to our many and generous funding partners, too many to name in this presentation tonight, but from 2013 to 2025, we were able to put 5-gram solar-powered satellite transmitters that we also call PTTs, I'll refer to that, on over 250 burrowing owls, both on public and private lands in 12 US states, 3 Canadian provinces, and 2 states in Mexico. You might wonder, how do you capture a burrowing owl that lives underground? So we have 3 different trap types in order to capture them. We have a 2-way trap that is placed in the female's nest burrow. So there's a door on either side that only swings in. So you put the trap in the burrow, the female's nest burrow. If the owls are in the nest burrow and they want to come out, they get trapped. If they're outside the nest burrow and they want to come in, they get trapped. It's very, very effective. We also use the 2-way trap in the male the male burrows, which are separate but close to the female nest burrows. So they are close. The males do a great job of bringing food to the female and the young. So he's out and about in another burrow doing his work, and the female is incubating eggs and raising the young. So two separate burrow systems. So in the males, we put the 2-way trap, but we put an MP3 player in that trap that mimics his territorial call. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. So the male is out and about. He's like, wait, that's my territory. Who's in my territory? Goes into the trap to investigate and gets captured. It's very effective. And then we also use a spring trap. You can see, I don't have a point at the bottom right. So it's a spring trap. It's a net with a spring. We open it up. It's like a bow when you open it. We have a mouse in a cage that's staked down, and that attracts they move around and the owls see this movement, and when they come to get the mouse, it springs the trap and then they get captured. So all 3 are very effective, but it just depends on the type of year. But yeah, it's great to have more than one trap system so we can be effective every year. So once captured, we band each owl with a metal uniquely numbered leg band. We take different body measurements that help us compare the differences between males and females. We put each owl in a little sock to help keep it calm, and we weigh it to make sure that they're heavy enough to be able to carry the transmitter. By regulation, the transmitter cannot be more than 10% of the owl's body weight. So if they're too light, we ban them, measure them, and then release them. We also check the belly to see if feathers have been removed and if there's a brood patch there, which indicates that the female has been incubating eggs. And then we also look for the presence of fleas. So this next series of slides show burrowing owl nest sites, fall and spring migration routes, and wintering areas from the first 10 years of this project as we deployed them across the western United States. And I'm just going to go through this quickly so you can kind of see the variation in this burrowing owl migration behavior. And it might be, I don't know if you can see it, but oh yeah, you can see the dotted lines and the solid lines. Those are migration routes in the fall, which are the solid lines, and the spring, which are the dotted lines, and they can be quite different. They don't follow the same path. So again, this is really fascinating, but again, remember that there are challenges along the way. Predation, we had one owl that was stopping over in Kansas. She got a talon caught in a hay bale. The farmer found her and called us and returned the transmitter. So all this stuff, so many things can happen along the way. So this is one of our earliest maps showing the big picture of western burrowing owl migration across Canada, the US, and Mexico. And if you note these circles, these are stopover concentration areas where the owls rest and refuel during spring and fall migration. And then also, I think hopefully you can see on the left how that PTT transmitter sits. It's a little backpack unit. It sits on the animal's back. It's nice and snug. It doesn't, and you can see that, hopefully that whip antenna that comes across the back, and it's very flexible, so it does not affect how the animal feeds or perches or flies. It's a really great system. So this is interesting. During both spring and fall migration, we found that over 90% of the owls that nested in Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota, and Colorado took a multi-day stopover in an area around Lubbock, Texas, that we call the Lubbock Circle. And the average time spent in the Lubbock Circle is 11 and a half days, with owls staying from 2 days up to 23 days. Such behavioral differences. They're so individualistic, just like us. One-way burrowing owl migrations in the fall have averaged about 1,000 miles, and they range from about 520 miles to 2,200 miles. Personally, I find this amazing for a creature of this size and this weight. It just fascinates me. So we have found too that while some owls show different behaviors and you can't pattern it, we have other owls that show site fidelity to both their nesting grounds and their wintering grounds. So here I'd like to highlight one of the females that we captured in July of 2019. This was on private property owned by the Buckskin Coal Mine north of Gillette. So that fall, she migrated 2,200 miles one way to winter northeast of Acapulco, Mexico. Then she started her spring migration on March 24th of 2020, and she returned to her exact same nest site in Wyoming 46 days later on May 9th. Her primary stopover hotspots were the grasslands in eastern Colorado, the northwestern Oklahoma-Texas border, and the Chihuahuan Desert grassland in north central Mexico. So this was a full migration journey of 4,500 miles, the longest of any burrowing owl in this entire study. Her record-breaking journey was featured in the July 2020 issue of Wyoming Wildlife Magazine. I have a copy here if you want to take a look. And it's so cool. We recited her the following July in 2020 at her exact same nest burrow. And we could see the antenna. We knew it was her. It was so exciting. And so again, she showed nest site fidelity to her breeding area. She mated with a different male that year, and when they migrated, they went in different directions. Again, very individualistic. So this is our latest map of burrowing owl migration in both Wyoming and Montana, where we're currently, was our third year. We have one more year at least in Montana around the Billings area. So some conclusions so far. We know that both the time individual owls spend migrating and the distance traveled really varies a lot, individualistic. We have important fall and spring migration stopover sites. We know certain areas in Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas are very important for our burrowing owls here in Wyoming and Montana. And there are several states across Mexico and both coasts of Mexico that are really important to wintering areas for burrowing owls. So this shows, oh wait, we have one more. Okay, this is our latest map showing the big picture of western burrowing owl migration across Canada, the US, and Mexico. These are all the projects together. This is the most recent map that we have that my colleague Courtney Conway gave. And this shows again how individuals, each burrowing owl is so individualistic during their full entire annual life cycle. How important how important it is for us to work together with our partners across the US, Canada, and Mexico to ensure that burrowing owls thrive on the landscape. Thanks so much for letting me talk to you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Sure.
What's their daily caloric intake like? That is an insane number of miles to fly. I'm just curious, what are they burning to make this happen?
That would be the daily caloric intake was the question. I don't know. I think that would be a great research project for a graduate student. I will pass that question on to Courtney because so my dear friend Courtney, he is the lead for the Utah Cooperative Research Unit. So he has a bunch of graduate students that work underneath him, some on this project, some on other projects. So yeah, always looking for new interesting ideas and questions. Thanks, Becca. Yes.
Your last map with all the data shows stars for the summer and then circles for the winter, I assume? And it shows some circles further north. Would that be wintering spots?
Yes. Yes, stars are breeding, so you can see the colors.
Yeah.
Stars are breeding, circles are wintering, so you can, stars are breeding, circles are wintering, so you can see how some, either they migrate short distances or they might have gotten, killed by a predator. They're,
Higher circles might be locality and not necessarily winter. Nebraska and circles.
Yeah, I don't have the specifics on that, but so the PTTs, the transmitters, typically last about 3 years. If they're doing well, the batteries, they don't get recharged as much in the winter because of they're solar powered. So they might turn off and then turn back on again while it's like, here you are, you've wintered here now, they're not as active. Then they turn back on. So it's kind of variable. But if it's all, good, the batteries last about 3 years. Burrowing owls typically live for 4 to 8 years in the wild. So, if a battery lasts that long, we can get some really good long-term information on, their lifestyle. Yeah, one.
Yeah, is there any difference between the nesting burrows and the wintering over burrows? Are they like one more developed or do they
Well, on their breeding grounds, they do have territories. So nest burrow for the female and the young, male burrow nearby, but a territory for escape. Yeah. So when we release them, they may not, go down their nest burrow or whatever. So they do have multiple burrows within each territory. I'm not sure how large the territories are. And that is another question about that we need to know on the wintering grounds. We do know in Lubbock, they use Lubbock. I asked a friend and colleague of mine in Texas, why do they go to Lubbock? What's in Lubbock? What's the Lubbock Circle all about? And he said, lots of prairie dogs and lots of culverts. So they do use, they're very adaptable. Yes, and they can use artificial nest burrows in places where, like I think in Canada, they've used where they've lost prairie dogs or natural burrows. They put in artificial burrows, and they are adaptable to that too. So again, very individualistic on that. Yeah. But here's the thing, and as a media person, so we've talked about, wouldn't it be fun to get a media crew together and follow that female's route, that 4,500-mile route, and do a documentary? Why did she stop here? What's here? Where did she go in the winter? Why did she spend the time here in the winter? So through the Wildlife Society, of which I'm on council, we're kind of talking about maybe getting a documentary together with our media folks. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, Katie.
You asked David Attenborough.
I would ask David, I would feel comfortable asking David Attenborough if I were to meet him. Yes.
How common are these birds? So, like, how many are you tagging? What percentage? Like, how likely is it to see them? And how do you safely observe these birds?
Luckily, okay, let me unwrap that. So they're considered uncommon because they have very specific habitat requirements. Burrows have to be on the landscape. They're more of an open habitat species, although you will see them, where sagebrush, they will forage in sagebrush. Let's say on the Pinedale anticline, we've done surveys there. We had surveys set up across the state for several years to find out where they are nesting, so then we know where we can capture them. So that was the one question. Can you remind me?
Yeah. So, how likely is it that you'll see them, and how do you do that safely?
Oh, they are very tolerant of humans. So safely binocular spotting scopes are the best. But they will be out and about during the day. They're not like other owls that are mostly active. They're nocturnal. They're mostly active at night. Yeah, burrowing owls are active during the day. They're also crepuscular, where they're active, dawn and dusk. So they're active a lot during the day. Yeah. And we've actually captured them at night where we've set up traps waiting for them to come out. So again, this real broad behavior that they have. Yeah. And was there another question in there? Okay. Yes.
This is kind of like a follow-up to Matt's question, but I have a couple members of my family that are pretty big bird enthusiasts, and I was wondering if there's any areas of Wyoming, Montana, more likely to see them. If I wanted to take someone to try to preserve them, where would you recommend going?
I would recommend, well, the Red Desert, but that's a vast area and you really have to know it. We had great luck on the Pinedale anticline. Yeah. So, and part of that, one of our research partners, Anna Chalfoun, through the University of Wyoming co-op unit, has been doing various bird studies, non-game bird studies on the anticline, birds that are really tied into sagebrush, and so we sort of tied our burrowing owl surveys on the anticline as well, and they shared their information when they were finding burrowing owls. So that's a good spot too, and it's very accessible. Yeah, but the Red Desert's super cool. Oh my gosh. So since they only live for 4 to 8 years, oh goodness, I want to say 8 to 10 eggs. Yeah, or and they don't all hatch, or don't all survive, but yeah, they produce a lot. That I don't know. It really depends again on predation. If there's a bad storm, a lot of water can flood burrows. Yeah, spring storms can be harmful, but that's why they have a lot. Yes. Pardon me?
Who's eating them?
Oh gosh, badgers will dig into their burrows and pull them out. Foxes, coyotes. Oh, they're active during the day, so red-tailed hawks, golden eagles. Yeah, aerial predators.
Other birds are.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah. Yes, Katie.
Is anybody working on preserving the ecosystem or increase the population of prairie dogs so that they have a better sort of like chance?
Good question. I wish Zach Wallace. Dana Nelson. Yeah, so that's a great question for my former colleagues at Game and Fish. Yep, the management actions that they might be doing. I know we've worked with BLM and Forest Service on Thunder Basin National Grassland. That's another, who asked? That's another great place, Thunder Basin National Grassland. And that's open and accessible to the public. It's just on the other side of the state, but it's a really good reason, yes, to visit, to travel Wyoming. We have such great things here. So yeah, it's working with others in other agencies to manage so that it's compatible with ranching as well as with wildlife management. So those are some of the great partnerships that we strive to continue. Yeah.
Aside from like destruction of prairie dogs and prairie dog habitat, what other ways are like humans negatively impacting this population?
Of burrowing owls or prairie dogs?
No, burrowing owls.
Oh, land conversion, we don't have that as much here in Wyoming because we have a lot of, public space, but in other parts of their range, converting natural prairie to agriculture. That's one of them. Pesticides and poisoning, not being, well, that's another thing. I'm not going to call it prairie dog hunting because to me, if you hunt something, you harvest it and you eat it. Prairie dog hunting is shooting, target shooting. I did my master's work on prairie dogs in Shirley Basin to determine if there was a large enough population to reintroduce black-footed ferrets. There was, and they did it, and it's a success. I'm so happy about that. But in some places, it's a sport. And it's, I think I'm going to leave it at that. So you can do the research and have your own, and I understand it's a give and take, but there has to be a balance. Yeah. Lead shot impacts, lead shot impacts hugely golden eagles. Oh my gosh, they will take those dead prairie dogs. One little speck of lead shot about this big is enough to kill a golden eagle when it's ingested. So lead is dead. Let's go copper. Yes.
To follow up on his question, you said the anticlines, you could stop to see them. Do they seem to be unaffected by oil and gas industry, or does it have an effect, I guess, in with development of oil and gas?
Well, it's where the prairie dogs are. The first couple of years when the graduate students were there, they would let us know where they were finding burrowing owls during their work on other sagebrush birds. A lot of the burrows were in the burrow ditches, and because the soil was softer, and there the burrows would be, and we could just pull over and set the traps. This was a lot of nighttime trapping, just the way it worked out. So they seem to, in certain situations, burrowing owls and folks, get along great. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, thank you so very much for being here tonight. And yes, cheers, one and all. Thank you. Thank you.